Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here today. And I think I feel privileged to be here today and talk about this very important topic, which is gaining momentum, I think, everywhere in the world. Um, you know, being a partner at KPMG, handling the queries around sustainability day in day out, I think what has become increasingly more important for us is to be able to address the problem of waste, the waste that is being largely created because of the way we are carrying forward our lives today, which is full of different kinds of materials that we come across every day. Um, I think one of the largest threats that we've been observing today is, the pollution in the marine areas, which is largely being caused, by certain materials which are leading their way into these marine ecosystems and leading to, an increased threat to the biodiversity into our oceans. I think the time has come when the world has realized it to be a huge issue, not just from the marine ecosystem perspective, but what we see as the landfills in our urban areas, which are filled to the point, they are largely filled with the waste which is not being either utilized, or they are being used as dump sites, which are creating further hazards and problems into our lives. um, Bringing forth this panel, which is very, very experienced, and renowned at the same time, I feel privileged, to be able to ask questions to these esteemed panelists who have been, gathered with us today. And I think it will be really interesting for, I think, all of us to hear their experiences, the way they've been connected, to the debate around what should be sustainability role, or how does sustainability come into picture, especially for reducing the packaging waste. And I think adhering to the topic and not going here henceforth on different kinds of issues that perhaps sustainability is related to today, and focusing the point of discussion around packaging waste. Let me just set some of the context here, and what I would definitely like to bring in, and I would like each of the panelists here to talk about first, is about how they are connected to this whole ecosystem of packaging. What are the things that they or their organizations are doing to identify sustainable ways of packaging, defining circular business models, making the lives of corporations easier, better, and at the same time acceptable to the larger consumer base, which is definitely striving for change. The consumers that prefer to have greener products, and also from the packaging perspective, are choosing products which are less harmful to the nature, which do not pose threats to the larger ecosystems. And coming from there, I think the regulations in the government are also playing a major role in terms of driving such efforts, by either bringing in regulations which are regulating certain substances which are primarily leading to the threats to the environment, or by way of introducing producer responsibilities, for these products, to be managed by those who produce that, or by those who create that waste. With that, I think let me first invite Mr. Chakravarthi from the World Packaging Organization. Mr. Chakravarthi, you've been associated with a global body, and I think it'll definitely be useful to every participant here to hear about your experiences and how you've seen the whole global debate evolving, the kind of ways in which the countries are addressing the problem of packaging, and what are the different alternatives you think are being discussed or evolved, where you or your organization are connected. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Manpreet. In fact, thanks to the team, Economic Times, ETH, ET and White, once again, for taking up this noble and very relevant cause for the discussion. And we have a host of experts. I'm also very curious to listen to all of them. Let me put my perspective as an individual and also representing the World Packaging Organization, the apex body in the packaging in the world, being on the executive board from Asia. Well, my friends, if you actually ask me now in today's context, you cannot disassociate packaging and sustainability as two different topics. In fact, both are so submerged and immersed in such a way. But let me also tell you, the world is really facing enormous challenges today. You all agree with me that it is climate change, environmental destruction, lack of resources, scarce resources, globalization, whatsoever, population growth, demographic changes. And if you really want to ensure that world remains sustainable for the future generations, our next generations, of course, we have no other alternatives but to learn in a circular economy way. The linear economy is a passe now. The take, make, dispense in industrial processes. Once it was working, and it's no longer working in our current scenario. And coming to the packaging, in fact, I strongly believe it's really an important tool for the sustainable society. Okay, many people worldwide say that packaging is just avoidable. If you can avoid all the packaging, we'll be more happy. Yeah, that's one side of the coin. But I strongly believe, rather, we strongly believe at World Packaging Organization, better quality of life through better packaging for more people. It's a primary goal we set ourselves at WPO. We strongly believe that society must learn to value the importance of the packaging. See, by educating people, you asked me actually what WPO is standing for and what we are preaching out. We really educate people, industry, government in a real constructive way, productive way, whatsoever. Packaging will become the most respected and the vital tool, undeniable to everyone. The good packaging is always the most important tool for the well-being and safety of the people, and for successful international trade and commerce also. One cannot deny that. But the only thing is, when the question comes, over packaging, under packaging, and the optimum packaging, right? So the right size, the right strength of packaging, and we need to have a holistic way also, which balances the right kind of usages, proper resources, which really work in tandem with the environmental, social, and financial needs, and all the packaging users of the society. And in a nutshell, reduce, reuse, recycle, and now recover, we are taught. They're not just idealistic words anymore, actually. And they are called for action. They are the basis for your performance, for real operative and powerful. They become a model also significantly over the time. But really, the challenge is always the identifying the most sustainable path for the packaging, which is complicated. So at this stage, I touch upon a couple of points and then I leave it to my fellow panelists. So what the role of packaging in circular economy, if you ask me, packaging really can contribute to reduce the wastage and thus making a circular economy more efficient. For example, if you take the example of prolonging or extending a shelf life and protecting the packaging, all the packaging goods throughout the supply chain damage. That's the point which is known to everyone. And packaging, after all, can contribute to prevention of huge food waste. One cannot deny that fact. And also, packaging can be reused. And somebody said, actually, it is going to be a new norm, a new industry. The waste recovery, the recovery of the wastage, the recycling is going to be a big industry in tomorrow's context. And yeah, recycled packaging can always play a significant role in reverse logistics, which will be very important for the future circular economy also. I think at this point, I leave it for further discussions to take up and willing to participate in the further panel discussion. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chakravarthi, for this context setting. And I'm sure, your organization is playing a key role in terms of, helping your members as well as the larger ecosystem in looking at, the solutions which would make sense. I think this brings me to Namrata, and I think you've done a lot of work, in terms of your academic, role as well, where you've looked at and studied various circular economy business models, and done a lot of research around what would work, what won't work. So I mean, happy to bring you in at this time, and hear from you on how you've been involved in this area, and what would you say around what potentially works and what doesn't, and what kind of alternatives should actually the packaging industry look at.
Thank you so very much, Manpreet. See, I honestly believe that packaging plays an extremely important role in our move towards a circular economy. And largely, I work with brands and strategies in terms of helping them understand how is it that they can become more sustainable. So at one level, if you see all the advertising, if you see a lot of communication, everybody wants now to be seen as a green product, right? So you've got cars talking about electric vehicles, you've got fashion brands who are talking about being more green, cosmetic brands also talking about the same thing. But let me tell you a secret, there is no such thing as a green product. So every single thing has a carbon footprint. No matter how sustainable the material is, the minute you start shipping it around, you emit carbon. Products can also be very responsibly made. But if the packaging is not proper, they will actually lead to carbon impacts. So, and even recycling has a carbon impact because of the process of collection and conversion. So if you look at things in absolutes, you always reach wrong answers. So no product is completely green, and excessive consumption of even green products does not ward off climate impacts. But we need to start looking at things in a relative context. For instance, an EV is greener than an SUV. LEDs use less energy than bulbs, the normal traditional incandescent bulbs. Natural fibers are better than synthetic ones. And also using recycled metals avoids the production of primary metals. So that's why we are really talking about things in this context. What is relatively better? We can't, create systems change just by thinking that, we will create that change. We've got to look at things in contexts. So when we start talking about a circular economy, we need to start looking at things in these kinds of ways. And that's really how I talk to people at a corporate level, at a personal level, saying that let's make better choices. Consumption is not going to solve the climate crisis, but responsible consumption will help us actually become far more aware of our actions and lead us to a circular economy and genuine deeper change.
Sure. Thank you, Namrata. And I think these were very powerful points that you put across. And I am sure there are further explanations that probably we would look at asking from you on specific matters. However, let me at this stage invite Rajiv, who is a brand owner who has experience, hands-on experience in terms of looking at the choices that he's had, for packaging his products. And I think, Rajiv, it'll be great if you could take us through your journey on, what were the key considerations that you had at the time when you were exploring what would be the best option for you for packaging your products, and what took you to deciding on finally going ahead with one option that you think today is also the topic of our discussion today. Rajiv, over to you.
Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. And thanks, Manpreet, and thanks to ET as well for having me on board. So I'm one of the founders of Rio InnoBev, and we are the makers of Rio Fusion Drink and Boom Energy Drink. And today I'm proud to say that all our products are 100% in aluminum cans. So let me just give you a brief story of how we started out in 2008. So basically, we started out with glass bottles. Our products were packaged in glass bottles back in 2008. And slowly, as we started distributing our products, we started realizing that the main consumers of our products were the youth. And we started slowly realizing that today, the youth are the main drivers for the green packaging, the sustainability thing, and various such initiatives. So that is why, with the conscious decision, we decided to launch our products in cans in 2011. And slowly, we started realizing that the cans were picking over sales as compared to the glass bottles. The exact same product was available in glass bottles as well as in cans, but slowly the ratio started tipping. In the first year, we saw that the ratio was 50-50. Then in the second year, we saw that it moved to 60-40 towards cans. And slowly after 4 years, we saw that our product was moving 80% in cans and 20% in glass bottles. So finally, after introducing the cans, 5 years after introducing cans, we decided that in 2016, we would have 100% of our products in aluminum cans. So we, invested in a new canning line, a high-speed canning line. We spoke to our channel partners, which is Ball Beverages, and we converted 100% of our products into aluminum cans, and we completely did away with glass bottles. And that has been a really turning point for our company, because since 2016, sales have also grown, and it's easier to manufacture the products in cans. It's the can is probably weighs around 10 grams, whereas a bottle weighs 220 grams. So there you see a straight away difference. That is a huge saving in terms of freight costs and electricity costs. And also manufacturing wise, breakage wise, handling wise, people are more happier handling cans as opposed to glass bottles. So huge advantages that we've seen over the years in the shift from glass bottles to cans. So as a brand owner and moving forward, I am very happy, very bullish that the can market is going to keep growing in India. And we were very happy to make that switch over from glass bottles to cans. And I'm happy to say that we've still stayed away from PET bottles, and we'd like to stay that way and keep ourselves as a sustainable company where we invest in sustainable packaging, we invest in protecting our water resources, and we invest in better electricity options, in fueling our plants with greener options. So yeah, that's my story about using cans so far over the last 8-9 years.
Thanks, Rajiv. I think that's a great story, definitely, because you are a real life example of how particular kind of packaging has worked for you, and not just for you. What we are debating today is that perhaps that's one of the I won't say best, but I think one of the best alternatives that is available and should definitely be considered when companies or brands are taking into account different alternatives. And at this stage, let me bring in Ashish. And Ashish, I know that you've been involved pretty deeply into the waste management value chains, and I think your role as a not-for-profit, where you've also driven campaigns and spread awareness about how do we perhaps get the wealth from the waste, and look at how difficult or how easy is it to manage a particular kind of waste. I think definitely looking forward to learn from your experience on how you've been dealing with this problem, and how do you see the topic for debate today from the perspective of a waste manager. Ashish, over to you.
Thank you so much, Manpreet, for having me, and thank you, Ball and ET and Wyatt, for creating this platform. Because I think the beauty of this platform is that we have people coming in from different places and different parts of the supply chain, and hearing everyone's perspective at the end. So I will not repeat any of those points because all of them are very likely said and very valuable. But would like to just share a couple of perspectives and what we have been seeing on the ground while working with the communities of waste pickers, setting up waste management systems from collection to recycling in a few cities across India. So I think, like Namrata ji rightly mentioned, I think it's about picking picking among the options that we have right now for packaging, and then we compare and contrast on different parameters. There could be more options. There's a lot of innovation happening in this space every day, not just in India but across the world. But looking at options that are currently at hand, it's important to do a fair comparison on different parameters. One of the top things that we have been focusing on is the IEC, which is the Information, Education, and Communication, and we believe that's very important. So, like Rajiv said, they saw a shift in the choice of consumers. That that must have come in for a variety of reasons. I can definitely say the number one reason was convenience, because that's what consumers look for. But apart from that, must be a chunk of audience who was also taking that decision because maybe they were increasingly aware about the concepts of sustainability, and be aware of some real facts related to the recycling of beverage packaging. So through the initiatives that we are currently taking at Green Dream Foundation, we are reaching out to around 5 million users every month, either through offline or online initiatives. By offline, I mean on-ground campaigns that are happening in different cities, and online, I mean different social media platforms that we have that have been organically built since 2008. That's when our NGO started. Some of the facts which Mr. Amit had also mentioned rightly. These facts are the ones which really, really move people. Facts like that the recycling rate of aluminium overall, is more than 75%. And we all believe, working on the ground with this waste pickers, that this number can be boosted further, which is just going to be in the benefit of everyone involved in the supply chain of waste management. I'll dive upon that a little later, but also looking at the fact that recycling versus making new metal saves up to 95% of energy. That's also something that the youngsters, the young change makers, people who are aspiring to reduce their footprint overall, are attracted to. And moving towards circular economy. So these days, this term is used a lot. Few years ago, the buzzword was 3 Rs: reduce, reuse, recycle. I believe right now the buzzword is circular economy. But the point is that, as consumers, they need to understand what exactly it is in the most simple way possible. We believe to drive that, most important thing is participation and empowerment of every stakeholder involved in that process that drives circular economy. From the point it is being sold at a retail shop, from the point it is converted into a post-consumer waste, which is not really a waste, it is a wealth for the waste picker, then who collects it, who sorts it further, and then sends for recycling. So I think, and we thought that how can we empower them? So there are a lot of initiatives that we are taking in different cities, especially for these informal waste pickers or rack pickers, if you want to say, who are just, these are like social entrepreneurs who do not have any social inclusions, who are not empaneled or, on the payroll of anyone. They are themselves collecting, they are themselves segregating and connecting to the recyclers. But the point is, in that process, while they still get the maximum value for aluminum beverage cans, up to 3 to 4 times of what they even get for other packaging material, be it PET or glass, which is a wonderful thing, because these guys may still leave a different packaging material lying on the road for a moment, but for aluminum is like gold for them. They are never going to miss it. They're definitely going to pick it. At times they bale it because the more processing they can do at their end, and they get huge values out of it. So we are working with them to boost their capacities and educating them in how to make more by connecting directly to the recyclers, by segregating better, so that overall, if we feel that the more empowered they are, the recycling rate of aluminum in India will not only sustain but will also boost further in the coming days. Because if these education initiatives and like the initiative today, this is in line with making consumers aware, right? So we expect the outcome of this will be that more adoption of aluminium as a beverage packaging material, which means there'll be more aluminium cans to be collected. And that's why, in parallel, we need more and more capacity building for these informal waste pickers. Finally, last but not the least, before I pass it back to you, Manpreet, there's a least recent initiative that we have launched in collaboration with Ball Corporation, which is called the Sustainable Circular Challenge. We have launched this as of last Monday. And under this, we are motivating the young entrepreneurs across the country, primarily millennials, who can come up with ideas or who already have ideas or have been working on something which drives circular systems. We are not really looking out for other packaging options in this particular context, but we're looking for people to come up with ideas that can help set up systems and processes for waste management, wherein everything is collected, sorted, and recycled and brought back to the shelf within 60 days. So this challenge is going to run for another month, and the entries are now open. So if anyone wants to, read more about it, they can go to our Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter page. So that's it from my side, Manpreet. I'll be happy to take some questions.
Thanks, Ashish. And I think what you said again is very valuable. And maybe let me have a question for you right away. I definitely wanted to understand further, on when you said you've been dealing with some of the important stakeholders, I would say, within the value chain. You talked about rag pickers, and I think in India, definitely there has been a kind of a social stigma, I would say, and the rag pickers not really being formalized, in many areas, and while not overlooking the contribution that they make, especially because the kind of waste that you get in India is not segregated at source, which brings in actually the importance of these middlemen, if I can say, if I can call them, who play a very important role in segregating the wealth out of waste, if I can say, but are not always compensated the way they should ideally be. What do you think needs to be done to tackle with one this kind of a stakeholder, and do you think these stakeholders, rag pickers, are also aware of the wealth in different kinds of materials? Especially you mentioned about aluminium cans being collected everywhere. So any ideas that you would want to tell us on, for example, how much do they fetch if they are to provide these aluminium cans to some recyclers, and how do you think, probably that's a broader question on how behavioral change could be affected, especially in the larger public around segregation of waste at source.
That's a very nice and holistic question that you asked. And I think that will help me complete the conversation and close the loop on that. So, firstly, Manpreet, I say this all the time in all the forums I go to. Just because something is recyclable does not mean it will get recycled. That is because if we are not segregating the waste properly and we are contaminating it at source, a lot of times, even I'm not specifically referring to aluminium, talk about any recyclable material, whether it be paper, whether it be glass, whether it be plastic. The point is, if it is just because it has the sign of recycle me, or a triangle which mentions what category of plastic it is, does not mean it is going to get recycled. And that's where the greenwash really happens. People do not understand what is plastic number one versus plastic number seven, and what does that mean, right? But the good news is the awareness among the consumers is on the rise, which is why even companies like Amazon India have been trying to reduce packaging as much as possible, and also mentioning very clearly on their packaging for these parcels that exactly what kind of plastic it is, and will it be getting recycled or not. So people are asking those questions. Because from the consumer behavior side, one of the key stakeholders that we are working with is the generators of waste themselves. These are residents, these are commercial areas, and the key initiative, we have this initiative called the Kingdom of Waste. We have named this initiative Kingdom of Waste because these waste pickers could really be kings if this waste is managed well, right? So basically, what we're asking is, we are going to different residential areas in different cities. I'll give you an example which is happening right now as we talk. So we have deployed a project for managing around 1,000 households in Hisar, which is in Haryana. 4 months ago, the segregation, and we were measuring all this with data on a daily basis. The segregation at source was 40%. We have already reached 92% as of the numbers that I received this morning. But bringing that behavioral change was not an easy journey. Every human being is different, the attitudes are different, there are cultural issues. So the strategy kind of localizes as we operate, but achieving it is possible. But the most important thing is, we humans have tendency to go back to our comfort zones and start doing things which are more convenient. Once we have got into the habit of doing something, it becomes very, very natural. Like, for example, we guys are getting into the habit of doing webinars, right? When we do an actual event, it will be like a new thing happening after a long time. So waste segregation is a very similar thing. It's a new culture that we are developing, but wherever that starts happening, the immediate impact comes on to the waste picking community as a stakeholder, because they have to spend less time in segregating, let's say, aluminium cans out of other material because they're receiving it separately, which means they have more time to collect more waste Because like I said, these guys are entrepreneurs. They don't have a fixed 9 to 5 schedule. The more they collect, the more they segregate, the more they earn. Right? So, and also segregating and the kind of incentives they get for selling these cans to different mediators and recyclers across the country vary significantly based on the location and the demographics. To give you an example, in a tier 2 city in Haryana, they could be getting 50 rupees per kg as a waste picker, versus in a tier 1 city like in a Delhi or an NCR, that could go up to 80 to 100 rupees per kg as well, right? But and those we are working on boosting those incentives, even increasing further, because what's happening in the current state is that there are 5 mediators in between before that particular can reaches the recycler, right? So the person doing the real dirty job on the ground is making the least. The mediators, not doing anything, are making the most. Our point is the guy who collects should send it to the guy who recycles. And they are the ones who should be, the ones who are most empowered and making the most incentives out of this process. That will ensure that, once these systems are incentivized, you don't have to go after anyone to collect it. Last example, and then, I think we can move on, is let's talk about this multi-layered plastic wrappers. It may, you get these biscuits, these, chips, all these FMCGs, which are being now pushed under the EPR rules to collect. But the point is, if there is no value in collecting that kind of plastic for a waste picker as a whole, right? If they're going to get 3 rupees, 4 rupees, 5 rupees per kg to collect it, they'll be like, I'd rather, and it's very light. So you have to collect a huge quantum of it to just get 5 rupees. Whereas in case of other types of packaging, whether it be aluminium or other alternative options that we have discussed today, it's easier to collect, it's faster to collect, and the incentives are up to 10x, right? So I think it's all to do with the incentives. And last but not the least, it's important to say that aluminium as a beverage packaging material, from what I've seen, pays for its own collection and recycling. So nothing better than that. And I think we should continue working on this.
Right. Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ashish, for that elaborate comment. I think made it crystal clear around, what the important, concerns are there within the value chain, and, how do we incentivize, or, how do we make policies become enablers, to bring forth, some change in that regard, which takes me back to, Mr. Chakravarthi. Now that you are, the again, a global body which has been looking at various aspects about, how policy, regulation, and changes are being brought in to, incentivize, if I can use the same word that Ashish used, on incentivize certain types of materials. And I know that you work on, different kinds of materials, of course, for depending on which sector you are or an industry is, there could be multiple kinds of alternatives. So what is your thought, and would you like to share some experiences on how, this global debate is perhaps leading you to certain kinds of materials which are today being talked about, in the debate of sustainable packaging? Mr. Chakravarthi, I think you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself.
I'm keeping myself always on mute so that it won't disturb others. I'm sorry for that. Right. Thanks, Manpreet, once again. I know it's a complex question. At the same time, as Namrata rightly pointed out, nothing is green in this world, in fact. How much green, that is only the debatable point. And in relativity only we are discussing. So that's how we have to move forward also. So basically, if, what is driving us? What is the need, and how? What is the path forward, or what is the way forward? All of us, the literate people, in fact, we think literate, but we need to really think about the future society. When you are talking about the principles, how packaging really can support a sustainable society, and how you can apply those principles in practice, that's the key. So because when you're designing, and firstly, let me reiterate, World Packaging Organization, we are material neutral. We strongly believe every material has its meaning, has its purpose, and in a right way. Only thing is, like Namrata told, we have to take it in a relative context, which is better for that particular segment, and how we accomplish that application in a right way, not harming the environment, rather in a very less harming way. So when you come to the principles we're talking about, the package, I believe rather it should be designed in a real holistic way. That actually means what? Design of the packaging should actually start at the same time the product, in order to maximize the compatibility of that the product, at the same time external and internal environment also, and how the package come into contact. That's one point. And the material, what is important point is many people compromise at the source of material where from they're using. The source is very important. The source is the responsible way. It should be for source. The product and package also must meet the needs of marketplace. And when you're talking about the application and the manufacturing also, it should incorporate the environmental clean methods and safe machinery, safe processes, safe operations, and the material should be easily recoverable. Yeah, this is again a big challenge. But so once the primary purpose is done, how easily we can recover that particular material, that should be incorporated in the design itself. Of course, the energy and other areas already everyone is touching upon, which is very vital. The resource manufacturing, distribution also, how the renewable they are. In fact, I saw you, Manpreet, one of your tweets, by 2050, the world will be totally the renewable energy only. The current conventional energy will be passed completely. So people are moving forward. It's not only the packaging alone. The greatest challenge anyways is always the education is the key. We always believe in that. And to be tough on people, let me tell you, when we are going back, how green in packaging, how not green it's a packaging. We are all driven by the market basically. And today a customer is very well educated. He's also well aware. Of course, the customer is completely lost when you say I'm green, I'm renewable, I'm recyclable, I'm this, I'm that, I'm sustainable. Definitely, he doesn't know what to choose from. See, but at the same time, however, the big fuss about green claims becoming business as usual also. Nobody can get a competitive advantage by stating yes, they are green when everybody does it. So in the future, what is going to happen? The source of competitive advantage always lies with probably you will be licensed to sell your products if you are transparent enough in this spectrum. And of course, since you asked me what is happening around the world, currently the European Union has already launched a great initiative on the regulation that properly define these green claims. It preempts all those green claims studies properly. Of course, it will take some time, maybe some 2 or 3 years to complete and pass the directive in totality, and then implement it also in the legislation format. But are you aware in USA some states have already have sanctions if you claim if you make false claims, for example, if you say my product is can be recyclable and there is a system actually that ensures collection and recycling of the product in question, then beware, you are subjected to some sanctions. So this is happening in US and the European Union already. But believe me, in the future, what is going to happen? The sustainability and green claims will have to be properly defined. And that ultimately helps your consumers and also companies. And they need to choose the packagings that are really, really better for the environment. Of course, as I told, it will take some time, but it might be expensive also in the beginning. But believe me, it is going to benefit the mankind at large, and there are people to access that. And I gave in one of my interviews to ET, of course, Economic Times recently. The collaborative approach is very, very much needed. In fact, I was also putting forward to the ministry also when Ashish told the waste recovery has to be encouraged in a holistic manner, the separation of the waste in a proper manner. So you need to really encourage the people who are in this industry and give those incentives. See, the government is incentivizing the poor for money for work. What do they call? Kaam ke liye paisa dete. it is in different nomenclatures. But I wanted the government to include this particular as a holistic purpose. The rag pickers and the recovery of the waste must be identified and sufficiently incentivized. Then definitely things will fall in place. Of course, for that industry also, you have the EPR and all, the extended product producer's responsibility. Polluter, I don't say polluter. People say polluter's responsibility. Producer's responsibility, I say. So all these collectively can definitely help the society in the future, and people are looking forward, and the society is well educated, and they are going to buy the products which really help the environment in the future. Believe me, that today's scenario is going to change. We all need to come together, the state, the societies, NGOs, industries, and then the users together. I think we are on the positive path. Enough efforts are happening, of course, not to the required levels, but countries are really changing. Especially the loss of food wastage and all. The World Packaging Organization, we initiated special awards for sustainable packaging, and then also another big award for Safe Food program. You know, safe food, when you say, it's not just extending shelf life alone, the total gamut of supply chain, the alternative, choosing an alternative packaging options, materials that really helps the environment, and which supersedes the previous material in a positive manner. So these are the initiatives we are already working on it. In fact, we strongly support the GPPS 2.4 global packaging for the sustainable society. World Packaging Organization strongly supports that also. And we collaborate with people worldwide, whoever wants to work for the benefit of the environment, benefit of the mankind in a positive manner. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chakravarthi. I think let me move on, to Namrata, because Namrata, I think Mr. Chakravarthi has expressly agreed with your thoughts around nothing is really green, and I have a question on that, because while you may say that nothing is green, I think what the brands are perceiving and how they're positioning themselves in terms of their advertising, to really be able to get some premium if they are a green brand. And similarly, the consumer preferences moving towards saying that I'm going to buy a greener product, or in certain sense, even if we go to a marketplace today, you have a choice between an organic product vis-a-vis another product which is probably grown in a more conventional manner, or I would say it doesn't really have a branding as yet of being organic, or having a labeling of saying that it has reduced a certain amount of carbon footprint. And the whole noise around countries pledging to be net zero by 2050, the companies and corporations coming out and saying we will be net zero by 2030 or 2040, and the role that probably, if I would argue, carbon offsets are playing in terms of meeting those goals today, are probably huge pledges that make them in a way positioned in a global scenario today, where the consumers, people at large, society is expecting them to be environmentally positive, and not just carbon. I mean, I just move on to say renewable, 100% renewable by whatever. Similarly, you're saying you'll have zero waste, zero water discharge. I think there are many things that probably come under consideration when you say you're green, and moreover, looking beyond your organizational boundaries to say the value chains that get involved. And how do you say that you're only going to use electric vehicles? I want to pledge to EV 100 today. So I think many incentives, many definitions are going under green. But how do you include all these things, when you're studying a circular business model? And, does pricing play a role? And to what extent does pricing then plays a role, in terms of you being able to actually close the loop? Because a corporation may not want, at the end of the day, it's easier for them to really go and landfill the waste or manage the waste by giving it to a vendor than actually think about a company where they could actually do an agreement and probably make use of the waste that they have today. So, just keen to understand your thoughts on how perhaps value is being exchanged, in a circular flow, and what role does, for example, recycling play in the whole ecosystem there, and how would you probably mold that into an answer? I know that I've said a lot of things, but looking forward to what you think in this.
That's a fabulous context, Manpreet, to how things are evolving actually. So there's so many things that are happening, and if you can look at 2020, it's been a pivotal year in many ways. So I was reading something. I was reading the IKEA report on sustainability, and they've done a massive worldwide research. And one of the key findings from that is that life now will have a 15-minute radius. Okay, that essentially means that the pandemic has led to fundamental shifts in how we shop and how we live. So they've taken out a report that is called the Life at Home report, based on global research, says that traveling long distances for work or leisure is obviously going to come down. And the fact that proximity to the office is also reducing. And people want a better work-life balance. They also are more connected to their homes, to their communities, and where they stay. And back to nature is a very important trend. Okay, so why I'm narrating this example is that marketing is all about brand preference, right? So how is it that you convince a consumer to actually believe that this shampoo is better than yours? How do you convince a consumer that this car is better than somebody else's, and so on? Now, sustainability is therefore a very important factor to consumers, and so is health. So the minute people are forced to stay in a particular location, one of the outcomes and the second order effects that people are seeing of this is a stronger connection to the local community, to your own environment where you stay, and the fact that you do not want to stay near a landfill, right? The fact that you want to be more healthy, you want to be seen as more responsible, more aware of your consumption choices. So on one side, the reality is, from a production point of view, there is no such thing as a green product. But on the second point of view, from a consumer point of view, they want to be seen as more responsible and connected. Now, that essentially means, so a smart marketer will actually say that, what is it that I can do within the fence, within my organization, to actually convince consumers that certain things are happening? And there is a lot that is happening in this context. So, by the way, the circular economy is the next gold rush, or it is a gold rush, whatever. So, and Manpreet, this is your area. So since the beginning of 2020, assets managed through public equity funds with the circular economy as the sole or partial investment focus actually increased 6 times, from 0.3 billion US dollars to over 2 billion US dollars. So which means that there's a huge amount of investment that is going in this. And that's for a variety of reasons: external factors, the company wanting to be seen more sustainable, it's cost efficient. They're also seeing that trend going forward. On this other side, they are using technology to scale the circular economy. So while at one point in time, we can say that being more sustainable is expensive. It does take investments. You do need CapEx to be able to shift from a certain production system, reverse logistics, all that is an expense. But the fact is that when you scale these kind of things, cost reductions also happen, right? So organizations and consumer-facing organizations, not just B2B organizations, are realizing that they need to do this. And if they scale it, then efficiencies actually happen. So say, for instance, there are trends, important trends towards traceability. So there is Dr. Pepper and Pepsi, which are using refillable microchipped bottles. We'll not go into what those bottles are made of, but the fact is that you can enable reverse logistics if you know where the product is. right now, a big part of the problem is you don't know where your product is. So you can't really take everything back and then suddenly start saying that, I will reuse those products or I will get them back to the original form. Another thing that is happening is asset tagging. So there are companies like Maersk who are doing cradle to cradle passports, which means you get greater control over materials that you use. Large ships, shipping containers, airlines, even your cars. If you can asset tag them, if you know where your assets are, you can actually take them back. And then the third piece that is happening around it is around blockchain. So there are blockchain platforms that are being set up that can actually provide certificates and proprietary sensors to prevent counterfeiting, but they're also very useful for the circular economy. So you can actually take that back. And Ashish doesn't like the word circular economy, but the fact is that it's corporate jargon that almost everybody seems to use to look at all the 3 R's or whatever, to say that how do we enable all this at various touch points. And so a long answer to your question also, Manpreet, to say that the many aspects that are happening and consumer trends are a very important aspect of all this. That is driving these changes. So I hope I've addressed almost all aspects of your question. Thank you.
Well, Manpreet, I'm allowed to add a point on this.
Sure, Mr. Chakravarti. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree with Namrata. It's the end of the day, consumers, we need to keep them in the light, and we need to address them in a right manner. Definitely, when we are talking about the green and no green, it's a big challenge always. We just talked about aluminium, the benefits, and how our friend Mr. Sangoi, Rajiv benefited by using aluminium all along. I fully agree. Actually, when India, we can no longer said as a developing country still. We are almost a notch above developing country. We are still using 1 can per person per year. I think that can change. That can change at least by multiple times in the coming days. Not just for beverages. In fact, I personally know the use of tin packaging, the can packaging has gone into multiple folds, which definitely benefit. And the recycling of the can packaging, tin packaging is easier. Definitely, that is going to find a way. And a lot is talked about the single-use plastics and all. I'm taking a cue from what Namrata was saying also. During the past 20-25 years, the kind of single-use plastic has come into our personal life so much, we cannot live without the single-use plastics in some or other way. So that we have to keep in mind. But how much damage this is doing to us and to our next generations and to the environment, that also has to be kept in mind. Last 20-25 years, the enormous employment, the addition to the economy, trade, etc., just because of single-use plastics in multiple sectors, it happened.
Sure.
So what we need to, in one line, I try to conclude, what we really need to see for the future is, we really need to move towards a circular economy, and to find a new way to design, make and use things that really think about the planetary boundaries. The only thing is whether you do it all along biodegradability or totally recyclability, we cannot say right now, because the technology is evolving by the day, and the future is going to happen different. Let's be optimistic about it. This is what I can say.
Thanks, Mr. Chakravarti, for adding that. I just wanted to go back to Rajiv, and I think I have a more business-oriented question to you. Largely linked with the fact that you already use, recyclable or recycled aluminum, if I can say like that. But how do you see the future evolving?
Yep.
And if we are saying that, aluminum is sustainable as a packaging material and everyone should use it, how do you see that impacting your future supply chain when, there is a larger competition leading to, maybe in the future, problems in you being able to get the desired quantity, and of course, by God's grace, I hope your business grows as well with with the growing requirement that you would have, and the capacity within the country, I would say today, of recycling. And Ashish did mention about the problems today, that probably we don't have an infrastructure which can guarantee you today that for the next 10 years you'll probably be able to get this kind of a supply chain. And another related question being the whole move towards looking at green to greener options. And if I say today, you say aluminium is a greener option or a more sustainable packaging product, I think there are also discussions going on around actually producing a carbon neutral aluminium altogether. So how products are being also labeled having been produced in a more carbon neutral fashion. We, I think, heard recently that India procured carbon neutral oil, for example. So those discussions are evolving. How do you see that you are going to secure this, from a business perspective? And any thoughts on whether you would pay more premium to get a carbon neutral aluminium if it goes to, actually buying virgin material in the future?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question, Manpreet. Keeping the future in mind, because right now we are focused on, probably a 6-month plan or a 1-year plan or a 3-year plan. But definitely we are regularly in touch with Ball in terms of, you're talking about the example of carbon neutral oil. So we are definitely in touch with Ball and, the can suppliers to see what better can be done next now. We've made the shift from glass bottles to cans, but how do we keep improving ourselves in terms of that? So it's definitely will come at a cost, because right now, even if you consider aluminum cans versus plastic, a simple 250 aluminum can is almost 3 times as much expensive as a simple 250 ml bottle. So the business question lies there is, will the consumers be ready to pay for it? Because that's something we have to keep in mind. So we are working on certain real premium products with Ball, which would be a much greener packaging, and hopefully that should set the trend, at least to do an experiment whether consumers are lapping it up. You don't know, if consumer today is ready to pay 30 rupees for a product, tomorrow he might pay 50 rupees for the same product. But we have to experiment. We just cannot say that it comes at a cost, so we won't do it, because you really don't know what the consumer wants unless and until you give it to them. So that's something that we are actively doing in tie-up with Ball. And of course, as you say, keeping up with the supplies, that's going to be a challenge. And in fact, Ball is also investing in some plants here in order to ramp up capacity. And that's what we would be looking at, in constant touch with Ball itself, because it's very difficult to put up our own facility. It's just out of question. So we have to work closely with our suppliers to work on that, so that supplies are not hampered, and of course costs are under control, because if supplies are limited, it shouldn't happen that the costs go above the roof. Because being a consumer facing product, we cannot just keep increasing prices as raw material price keep increasing. We have to keep the consumers in mind, because any price increase leads to a decrease in sales. So that's why we work closely with Ball. We have regular meetings with them, and to see how we can keep driving the future. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it does answer, Rajiv. Thank you. I think this brings us probably to an end of the panel. However, there are some questions that I've received, from the participants. So I'll just very quickly, probably some are already addressed to some people. So let me just take it from that sequence. So, Mr. Chakravarthi, there is a question for you on how packaging can support sustainable society and how the principles can be applied in practice.
I think I addressed this already, but
right, sure.
I'll tell you. So we talk about the holistic scenario. We already talked about how the materials are sourced. Of course, the Namrita said that the track and trace and the integrated chip, etc. It might not happen everywhere, but definitely responsible way. That is more important. How we are responsible, the producers and the raw material suppliers and the source, the product and package must really meet the needs of the marketplace at a very competitive cost also. Like I said, the principle should be manufacturing processes, machinery, the environment, everything must fall into that, and the energy and resources that also have to be considered in a holistic manner. And last but not the least, education of all the stakeholders, that is important, and consideration in the whole supply chain government, that is also important. In a nutshell, in a single word, the responsible packaging producers, responsible product producers. This will be the key in the future.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chakravarthi. I think, Ashish, there's a question for you, which is about what are the benefits with aluminum as a packaging material? I think you've addressed it, but any quick remarks that you would want to give on this question?
Yeah, while I do not manufacture any aluminum products.
I think it is for Ashish. Mr. Chakravarthi, this is for Ashish.
Okay.
Yeah.
No worries. Actually, this is a question which we have addressed all of us together already. But
exactly.
I'll reiterate a couple of points.
Yeah.
I think firstly is the ability of the aluminum beverage cans. At the time, from the time you dispose it in the right bin, comes back to the shelves within 60 days. One important thing which I had mentioned earlier, I'm reiterating. It's very important to understand the difference between recycling, upcycling, and downcycling. Uh, the alternatives, when we do a compare and contrast between the alternatives that we're looking at for beverage packaging, uh, you know, aluminium is truly getting upcycled or at least recycled. However, other material is getting downcycled. So, for example, if there is a PET bottle or any other kind of plastic, it cannot be recycled to be the same kind of plastic. It has to be made into a different product altogether. A PET bottle gets converted into fibers for the textile industry, right? But eventually it keeps getting downcycled and will end up as microplastics in the environment. The best thing about metal, best thing about aluminium is that it retains its quality irrespective of the texture, the packaging, the printing. It comes back in the same quality, and it again creates more value in the supply chain of the waste management as compared to the other material. There's so many other facts available. We are also constantly posting these facts because like I mentioned earlier, consumers are the ones. I'm hoping this question is from a consumer. Consumers are the ones who need to know these facts, because a lot of times these facts are eye-opening, and these facts are not presented to you in the normal day-to-day life. We are generally being driven by convenience rather than these scientific parameters that we talk about. So we are trying to present all of this information in a very consumer and user-friendly way on our social media platforms as well. And every 2 or 3 days we talk about some new facts and try to present them to people so they understand why aluminium over other packaging. So there's a lot of misconception as well, because when you look at other aspects of it, a lot of people are completely against it. But it is a process of educating them, because you cannot look at a particular packaging in silos. You have to look at it in a holistic way, and you also have to see, is it sustainable on the triple bottom line? It's not just about financial, like I mentioned earlier. It has to be socially, environmentally, and economically viable. Only then such a packaging can be the packaging of the future.
Can't agree anymore.
Yeah. Thanks, Ashish, for that very crisp and very specific answer. Rajiv, a question for you is, how do you think aluminium as packaging material is adding to accelerate customer-centric growth with your brand?
Oh, very much, absolutely. Because as I said, our main target audience is the youth between the age group of 13 to 25. And I think this age group today is one of the major drivers of sustainability and the green revolution, because they're very aware, they're very well read, or, so much thing going out, especially with the Greta Thunberg thing, and, she being an idol for the youth. So in terms of our brand in being in aluminum cans, that gives us a very good edge, a very good boost in terms of, the competition. And also one important thing is aluminum cans in terms of packaging look very attractive on the shelf, very premium, very niche in terms of a similar product in PET bottles. So in terms of consumer perception of a can, a product being safe, being probably international, is very much prevalent among the youth today. So we definitely have an edge of being in cans today.
Right. Thanks, Rajiv. I think, Namrata, the last one is for you. It's about, while it's great to see fully recyclable packaging solutions, the same are not very cost effective and customers are generally not willing to pay for the same. What work is being done to, make it more viable, and, how can we incentivize things like recycling?
So, there are multiple legs to this, and the first one that I want to highlight is that creating a circular economy for 5 key sectors of cement, aluminium, steel, plastics, and food can cut CO2 emissions by 3.7 billion tons by 2050, which is equal to cutting out all carbon from transportation, right? So if you were to stop all transportation, and by the way, last year, all transportation didn't stop. A large amount of it did, but it cut down carbon emissions by 7%, right? So it's perhaps the first year after so many years that carbon emissions have actually come down. And by using recycled materials, we are likely to create significant impacts. So companies at one level need to invest in various things and shift their current practices. Also, it requires capital expenditure for them to do certain things. On the other hand, if they were to actually enable sustainable practices by reducing materials, by actually recycling materials, and by getting consumers also to become participants in all this, it will have significant impacts in cutting down emissions. Also, eventually, yes, cost impacts also are likely to happen. So earlier I did mention the fact that, nothing that we do at a small scale is going to have a significant impact, but the number of consumers that companies have are in thousands, in lakhs, and in crores, right? Some of the largest companies in India and in the world actually, can enable the power of the consumer economy to help address this very important issue. I think that's where the strength is. So I'm not really sure how to address the pricing question, but the fact that incentives can be built in to enable this, and I think marketing is at a very important has a very important role, and the brand has a very important role in enabling this.
Right. I think well said there, Namrata, and I think we've also reached the time that we had for this panel. Thank you very much to each one of you for bringing in these great insights. I'm sure all the participants have benefited from the wisdom that you've just shared with all of us today. And thank you very much, Economic Times, for organizing this. Very knowledgeable, I would say, Seven, and I've learned myself a lot of things, from you all. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great evening.
Yep.
Thank you
Thanks a
all.
lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manpreet.